Welcome and hello to a new episode of Your Friendly Physicist and Other Nerds. Today I want to start with a short review of the previous episode. There, my guest Priyanka told us about why we as humans send art into space and even onto the moon. And during our talk, questions appeared like who actually owns the moon, how to democratize the access to space, and how to make the new space race sustainable. Today, we dig into these questions in a bit more detail. And we do this together with the Vice Chair of the Galactic Council of Lunarc, Lakshmi, Karan. Now, first of all, this is an incredible cool title, while the Lunarc organization also is pretty cool. Its mission is that all humans benefit from space exploration and not just some few billionaires. And one of their ideas to achieve this is to build an actual university on the moon. Now, Priyanka, my guest from the latest episode, is part of Lunarc's advisory council, aka the Space Federation. And thanks to her, I became aware of Lunarc. So many thanks to you, Priyanka, and welcome to the show, Lakshmi. Let's talk about how you want to build a university on the moon. It's so great to have you on board. Many thanks for joining. It's a pleasure.
Not at all. How did you meet Priyanka?
We met at a wedding in India
Okay.
of a common friend of Shambhavi. And
Okay.
Shambhavi is great in bringing people together. And there were so many great
Okay.
people on this wedding, and Priyanka was one of them.
Good.
And
Good.
we stayed in contact and kept in
Nice.
touch. And we wanted to have like a deeper conversation about her art and how she brings her science, her space science, and her art, all of this together, and how she uses art to communicate really the big stories and the big storylines. She's doing so well with this. And I wanted to have a conversation and record this in an episode for so long. And last month or 2 months ago, it finally happened. And
Good.
we had and there was also discussion about Lunarc
Yeah.
and the mission you have. And then I looked it up, and it's amazing. I mean, the webpage and the vision you have, really, it's wow. A couple of years ago, I was in Pittsburgh in the Moonshot Museum.
Yes,
And
you
it's
did write that.
Yeah, and there was the question, who owns the moon, actually?
Yeah.
And it's a super relevant question. I mean, at
Yeah.
first you think maybe, yeah, who owns the moon? I don't know. Why do I care? But actually, we should care.
Yes. Yes. Everything is so, I'm kind of new to the space sector
Hmm.
because my background, I started off in technology. So I was a
Okay.
coder way back when. But then I've spent a significant part of my life in the social sector, so working in social innovators and philanthropy. And I think for me, I've always had a soft spot for space. I grew up watching Carl Sagan and Cosmos, right? Like it
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
incredible. Fell in love with the stars. And I've always carried a bit of that with me. So it's not particularly the moon. But I think what I realized is with this current race to the moon,
Hmm.
how fast it's happening, right? Like when you start paying attention, you realize like, wow, in like 5 years, they're going to be back. In about
Yeah,
10, 15 years, there's going to be habitats. It kind of made me realize that we need to really use this blank slate, this opportunity to be able to rethink the future for Earth. It's
yeah,
not just about the moon. So that
yeah.
was kind of, I think for me, it surfaced a lot of questions. Although I should go to that museum. I will be in Pittsburgh next month. So I
Oh,
could check.
really? I warmly recommend this museum. It's actually it's a very small museum. Actually, it's just 1 or 2 rooms, but
Yeah.
it's next to a workshop where they are building and developing space rovers and space landers. And you can watch through a window how the engineers are doing the work. And there are PhD students who are guide you around and
Yeah.
explain the questions. And
Okay. That's now on my travel bucket list.
it's a little bit hard to find because it's I think it's next to a McDonald's and next to a Wendy's, and behind that it's the Moonshot Museum. But it's one of the greatest museums I visited in the
Yeah.
last years.
Maybe there's some hidden message from the universe about that, Lucas, if we think about it.
Yeah, yeah,
The profound questions are in the middle of French fries.
yeah, 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 yeah. I thought the same, but yeah, we found it, and it was really great. So first of all, I want to congratulate you on the greatest title of all times, like the Vice Chair of the Galactic Council of Lunarc. That is amazing, really.
When we started Lunarc, I'm a big Star Trek fan.
I could see that, yeah.
And I always envision the future more Star Trek than Star Wars. Although reality is heading towards Star Wars, my hope is Star Trek. And life is so serious that you got to bring some fun
Hmm.
into parts of what you do.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I
I
fully
think of
agree.
saying, listen, if we have an audacious literal moonshot,
Yeah,
it's the Galactic Council, and
absolutely.
and my fellow board members are very accommodating with all of this fun stuff.
It's nerdic, but as you said, it brings fun and
I am quite nerdy. I do have an inner nerd that I'm proud of.
yeah, I mean, you're a perfect guest for Your Friendly Physicist and other nerds, so it's perfect. But let's talk about Lunarc. What's the
Sure.
actual mission of Lunarc?
So, like I said, we started it because there is now an opportunity. It's like the Wild West, right? Space
Hmm.
is unwritten. Everybody's out there doing their own thing. And it also allows us to get a different perspective shift about Earth, right? So for Lunarc, I think we started off with the simple mission of saying, how can we democratize access to space? What does that mean? It means that all of humanity, and I mean that, gets an opportunity to shape that future, not just a handful of billionaires or a handful of governments or some companies, right?
Yeah.
So at the core of Lunarc is really, you can think of it as like the three I's: inclusion, inclusion. It's important. And that's why we're starting with the farthest community from space, marginalized, underrepresented
Hmm.
community. The second one is imagination. I feel like this world, we're so bogged down by like nitty gritty, small incremental stuff. Like we got to think big, we got to reimagine. And then the last part of it for us is really about impact. It's not about the technological advances. It's really about humans at the center of all of this, whether we are on the moon, on Mars, or here on Earth. So it's really about inclusion, imagination, and
Hmm.
impact. And I think that's how we're thinking about everything that we do. How do we center around really human dignity, human rights as we think about space?
And how do you do this in a specific way? There's this idea of founding the
Yeah,
first lunar university. How does
yeah.
this fit into this triangle: inclusion,
Yeah,
imagination, and impact?
correct. So, when we were first thinking about, okay, how do we build that citizen, the way we talk about it is a citizen movement space initiative, right? So it's not a country or something. And we said, what is the one thing that we would want to see? And probably a little bit influenced by Starfleet Academy here. But the idea of a university or a learning institution, because some people have an allergic reaction to the word university. So let me say a learning entity on the moon. What does a learning environment symbolizes? The number one thing is humility. You want to
Mhm.
learn something. Curiosity, like you're open to ideas, you're open to knowledge. And collaboration, because nobody learns in isolation, you're learning with something, right? And we really strongly felt like when humans become interplanetary, we have to go with these values of humility, curiosity, and cooperation.
Mhm.
And a learning entity encompasses all of it, right? So that was really the birth of the idea of a lunar university. And it actually, the kernel for it, there were some people thinking about it a couple of decades ago, so it's not an original idea.
Okay.
But I think we said if we were to do that on the moon, and we want to do it with the value of inclusion, right? Of having the citizen movement, the first thing we have to do is raise awareness about the space race. And we have to let people know it doesn't matter what your circumstances. You don't have to be a PhD. You could be a farmer in Senegal, right? If you care about it, you have the right to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah.
Often people ask me, are you a space scientist? And I said, no, I'm not. Are you a billionaire? Definitely not. Right? So the first is, how do you inspire people to feel they too can
Hmm.
actually be a part of this?
Hmm.
And how do you then, educate them about the space race and saying it's not some distant future, but it's imminent, right? So
Yeah.
that's the first step. The second step is once you activate and mobilize people, you want to give them something to be a part of. How can we get people from different walks of life? You could be an indigenous community, tribal community, you could be in Silicon Valley, it doesn't matter, right? You're coming together to co-design, co-create solutions. And the key part of this whole construct is the citizens who build it will own it.
Yeah,
It's
that's perfect.
it's not like Stanford University. I'm not picking on Stanford, but I'm just saying that as an example, right? It's not like Lunarc owns the Lunar universe. That's not it.
Yeah.
We currently don't have a model on Earth, or at least I don't know of one, where students design it. Students own it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we should think of new governance models as we think of the future, not repeat the same things. So that's really, we have a phased approach to it. But I'll tell you right now, Lucas, I don't have all the answers to the plans. And I think that's the good idea, because the way we see it is the community will build it.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, it'll be Lakshmi's vision for the Lunar University. And you know what? That'll be quite boring.
Yeah.
I think the community can build something much better.
Yeah. It's just great to listen to what you just said, because the greatest projects I saw, it doesn't matter if it's like a innovative chair at some university or a coral reef restoration project on the Philippines or a charity project. The most successful projects always have been the projects where the community owns the projects. And the more inclusive it is, the more successful it is. You have to make the community part of it, and the community has to own the project.
Yeah.
And you give up control, I would say. As you said, it's not Lakshmi's vision of Lunarc, but it's a together thing, and then it will grow into something more valuable.
You know, I'm sure you've heard of this saying, and I don't know where it originated from, but you know, it's credited to Africa, is if you want to go fast, go alone.
Yeah.
If you want to go farther, go together.
Yeah.
And come on, man, Moon, Mars, they are farther.
You don't go fast there.
You
Absolutely.
could go fast, but you're not going to make it there too long.
Yeah. So how far is the vision already?
Remarkable. I feel so blessed because I almost feel like the universe is conspiring to make this happen.
Oh,
So
nice.
we started, we're a nonprofit. We started in 2022, just a little over 2 years ago in November. And within 2 years, we've already landed something on the moon. We've got another mission in December coming up on Astrobotic. You know, and so I think the first phase I told you, right? Like, how do you inspire people about space race? How do you build an inclusive conversation? It's happened so fast that actually we're kind of pinching ourselves saying, how did this happen? But I think what it is telling us is there is a real appetite for innovative, audacious, inclusive solutions, right? We're finding community. Like, say you heard about me, somebody's going to hear about this podcast and feel inspired. And that's really how we've attracted volunteers and advisors to be a part of this, because we're really a small nonprofit to have been done what we have. It's because of the mission and how it speaks to people in today's world that's particularly polarized.
What communities are you attracting? So what people come to you and say, hey, I want to be part of a Lunar University. I want to contribute.
It's a more concerted effort on our part. We are reaching out to marginalized communities, nonprofit partners. So that's our effort. But how did we get the first ride to the moon? So we are part of LifeShip. LifeShip is a company that sent, a collection, and we are, part of that collection. So the founder of LifeShip heard about Lunarc's vision, Lunar University, reached out and said, hey, I'm inspired by it. It feels, I support this vision, and I want to invite you to be a part of it. And then we found a philanthropic organization, a funder, who said, I'm inspired by this, and I will help pay for that payload. It's not like we have a big network of high net worth individuals, and we don't even know who to call for a ride. And I think that's what I mean by like how we connected, right? We lead with yes. Who is it that's coming to Lunarc? Because they're drawn by something in this story, and everybody has a role in this. That, like I said, you could be a farmer in Senegal, and if you're interested in being a part of this, there's a role for you. Because what we are focusing on, which is important, I think, to say at this point, we're not starting with, rocket ships and landers. We're starting with the humanities, the field of humanities, right? Which is, once we get there, how are we going to make sure we don't kill each other? All of that trust, that equity, the compassion, the social structures, and how are we going to think about resource distribution? How is that going to be equitable? What's going to happen to the billions of people on Earth when a handful of people on the moon start to make decisions? That part needs to be thought about as we are building the rocket ships.
I mean, you're coming from the humanities. When you talk to natural scientists, engineers, rocket scientists, physicists, biologists, you find a common language, or do they say, what do you want with art on the moon? Why should we even care?
Well, of course we find common language. At the end of the day, they're all humans first. They are fathers, brothers, mothers, daughters, live in communities, right? And so I think art as a universal language, it's an emotional connection. We can't describe it. I think it doesn't matter whether you're in the private sector, you're interested in making money, or you're in the government and you're interested in power. At the end of the day, you want to see a more peaceful world, no matter what your interests are. And in fact, one of our inspirations to start this is called the mother of astrobiology, Lynn Harper. Because when you look at nature, people who work closely with nature understand the interdependence for survival, right? Nothing happens in isolation. At least thus far, we've never felt the resistance of dumb idea. I mean, we've been asked the question of like, this feels too audacious for a small nonprofit. Yes, right? But not, because I'll tell you one thing, we don't have the power to stop a mining company or a military base on the moon. What we're saying is you could have 10 military bases, you could have your own country thing, but we need a common place in space that is actually something that is talking about nurturing all of humanity. That's the proposition. It's I would say a better idea, but nevertheless, a new idea.
All people want to live in a more peaceful world when I look into the news. I agree to 99%, but there's still the 1% where I think they don't care at all and they care about themselves and their money. Do you think this could be an issue at some point when Lunarc and the Lunar University is growing and becomes maybe, let's say, a more relevant player in between mining companies, military companies, space agencies, and so on?
This is why we're building a citizen movement. One of your questions was, is it a NASA? We're not part of any one entity, because then you have the identity of that entity. Our identity is human. For now, we may not be a threat. People might not perceive us as a threat, but to your point, if we start to get, 100 million people advocating for this, but I still feel if we are inclusive of perspectives and voices, right? Because we're not saying there should be no national sovereignty issues. It's not possible. We're not saying, because innovation needs capital investments for innovation, right? So at least my personal view is not that business is bad, government is bad, right? What we're saying is, but there's something missing when you just have these two pillars, because unintended consequences happen. And you need a community that is starting to think about that, right? So it's not about who leads as much as, is there room for a third pillar, which is the citizen interest as part of this conversation? So I am in my 50s, Lucas. I am far more optimistic about the future.
That's great. That's great. Let's continue with this optimism. If now some of the listeners would say, hey, this is a great idea, how can they contribute to the Lunarc vision?
Yeah. So, like I said, we're rolling this out in phases, okay? But the most immediate thing they can do is, if you go on our website, there is a link to the Lunar University Declaration. Sign it. If you believe in it, read it, sign it. And what we are doing is every time we have a mission going to the moon, we are sending the signatories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of preserved. So we just, people just missed out on the second mission because we just finalized the payload. But we'll have another one coming up next year, people. So to go ahead and say, that's a very tangible commitment of saying, I support this. But I think what's the exciting part is we're launching a global student campaign to actually envision the Lunar University. Right? So we invite hundreds of thousands of students to act. And if you're in elementary school, right, like you might be envisioning, how would we live in the, what would that space be? If you're in high school, you're starting to think more, strategic questions around it. If you're in university, you're answering different questions. So we're looking to launch it this year, and we're hoping to get 1 million perspectives that we will send to the moon, right? Ideas around the Lunar University. That's another opportunity. If you are a scientist, if you're a technical person and are interested, you could be part of our, did you check out what our advisors are called? It's the Space Federation.
Space Federation, yeah.
We welcome you because we really, if you're a monk, if you're a theologian, if you're a chef, it doesn't matter. Your perspectives of what the future is valuable, right? So, you join that. And as we launch the Earth Hub, which is the terrestrial prototype of the Lunar University, there's going to be many opportunities for you to be an advisor, to be a participant, right?
Okay.
And I think, let me leave it up there. If anyone in your listeners belongs to a space agency, hey, we want you too. Because listen, you want to inspire the next generation, what better? I can't think of a single idea out there that can actually get them excited about going back to school.
Yeah. Earlier, you said that some people have an allergic reaction when they hear the word university, and I can't believe this is true. I mean, universities are the greatest places on earth, no matter where they are. There's so many motivated, inspiring people there. I just love going to universities and to teach or to learn or to listen or to talk, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's so rewarding going there every day.
Yeah, but Lucas, it's also, I think, the way we're thinking about this is the community is going to define what learning looks like.
Exactly.
And in the day of AI, right, if information is in your fingertips at any point in time, well, what is learning? What is learning? And learning, we've always done it as an age cohort. Maybe learning should be intergenerational. What if we had grandparents in classrooms, we were learning about something?
Yeah.
What would that be? And I think that's what this frees up, right? To think about the future of learning across generations, across fields of study. And so we can actually make learning exciting, even if people don't like going to school.
Yeah. Absolutely. Your background is coming from the humanities. I think this will be a really, really important discipline in the future, because you said with AI and with Google and ChatGPT, the knowledge of the world is accessible in an instant. Yeah. So we need to develop new skills that an AI doesn't have. We need to have empathy. We need to how to communicate, how to learn, how to teach, all these things. This will be super important. And I'm convinced the physicists and the chemists and the natural scientists alone, they won't achieve this. We are in 100 years still sitting in some lecture rooms and having a professor standing in front of us.
For me, the way I think of it is, we need technology to survive in space. But we need what makes us human to thrive. Yeah. And I think that's I think in the next decade, we're going to have that introspection of saying, well, because if we just rely on human intelligence, which we've done thus far as a mark of success, well, there's going to be something else that's going to be a lot smarter, right? So then what is it that gives joy, a sense of living, that satisfaction of being human? I think things like love, we don't talk about love when we talk about technology, right? Except when you like technology. Yeah. I think love, compassion, community, and that could be different perspectives for different people, right? People in some communities might think of that differently. And I think there would be clashes. There would be, opposition viewpoints. But that's the university setting. That's where debates happen. That's where better ideas are generated, right? It's not about saying there's just going to be one thing. Lunar University, the goal from the very beginning is to flood the marketplace with ideas and then see what bubbles up. That is such an energizing place that people want to be versus, we've got 5 ways to do it. They're not perfect, but we're going to go with them saying, no, that's not what we want.
Do you have an example of such an idea that just popped up out of the blue, out of nowhere, just because of flooding the market with perspectives, ideas, and see what comes up?
From our Lunarc experience, or you're thinking just generally?
It doesn't matter.
Well, in Lunarc, we haven't seen any yet. I'm trying to think what might be. That's a good question. Music. Think about it. Creative expression, music, right? The different genres of music that have emerged. I mean, nobody would have thought about hip hop. Can you imagine? And I think just when you're flooding that creative human, and it's a very emotional connection, right? Music. I don't know if you play an instrument or sing or something. Yeah, music, man. Art, creativity.
Yeah, it's true.
And that perspective shift, I think, is important.
Last week or 2 weeks ago, there was a high resolution image. I think it was from ESA, but I'm not really sure. High resolution image of Europe with all the mountains and the forests and the rivers and everything. But the greatest thing was that you don't see the borders.
Borders have evolved over time. They're not, for a physicist, there are no natural laws for borders, right?
Yeah.
It's a construct.
It's a construct, yeah.
It's an important construct. I think it's guided humanity's growth, evolution, perspective, cultures through those constructs, identities, stories. I think so. We don't want to dismiss that. Yeah. But I think what we have to say is when you have an opportunity to rethink systems across borders, then the best place to do it, because you can't do it from Earth. You just can't. You just need that distance to be able to see it.
Do you think that the world would be a better place if every citizen has the chance to go to space at least one time, to see the Earth, the blue dot, our home, our life ship from above?
No, actually, I don't think we need to go to space to have a better world. I think right now we have an opportunity to do that. But I actually think you can have a better world here if we tap into more our local communities, if we actually go and talk to our neighbors. I'm probably old-fashioned when I think that way. I don't think you need frontier technologies. The answer is not out there. The answer is always here with us. Space now offers an opportunity to have that conversation because on Earth, we are still fighting wars. We are so fractured that it is going to take a long time for us to find that sense of oneness, right? That's the way I see space. But do we need to go to space to find our humanity? No, I don't think so.
That's a good answer, actually. That we don't have to go somewhere else to find something that we already have.
Yeah, when you see your dog or when you see the flower or when you feel the cool breeze on a warm day, that poets talk about, right?
Yeah.
That feeling of what it means to be human. But where it becomes challenging is you are caught in a system that is dysfunctional, that does not allow that to bloom. Yeah. And that's what this going to the moon offers, is a clean slate to actually say, okay, these systems that have evolved over centuries continue to a form of dysfunction. And we're trying to optimize within it, which is marginal, right? And so what we need are new systems that are relevant for today's day and age and set us up for the future.
And not to repeat the same mistakes we did in the past.
We're gonna have new mistakes, Lucas. Let's not delude ourselves.
Not the same mistakes. I mean, doing mistakes is human, and there's nothing wrong about doing mistakes, but doing the same mistake twice or even multiple times, that is really stupid.
Particularly when it increases suffering, when it increases the degradation of our home planet. Because listen, what if we go out to Mars, moon, and like 500 years, 1,000 years, we realize, oh my God, no, Earth is the only place, and we've messed it up here.
When you think into the future, like 10 or 15 years, how do you envision the Lunar University or Lunarc? What is the Lakshmi vision? Now, to be specific, because I'm talking to you now.
Let's do it. So given the trajectory of the last 2 years, I'd say in 10 years, we'd actually have a Lunar University physical infrastructure on the moon. Now, the caveat being Starship flies or somebody else gives us the right there. Okay, so we're not in the rocket. 100% possible. I envision, we talk about this at Lunarc, a mycelium network, because we see Lunarc like scaffolding. You know what I mean? Like we're just holding the structure, but actually there's a mycelium network. There are like 40,000 learning institutions around the world, formal, informal, that are collaborating and sharing. And there are new ideas coming up, and they're being sent to these simulation centers and analog sites and tested by different communities. And new knowledge is being generated and shared and co-owned. And then in 10 years, there is a physical spot on the moon that says Lunar University. Yeah, it's going to happen, Lucas, because you're going to be a part of it.
You already have me on board the Lunar University and the Lunar mission.
And bring your friends and your community.
I bring as many as possible. No, that's a great vision, really. Oh, it was so fun talking to you.
It was. Thank you so much. Yeah. I just, when I talk about Lunar University, I do want to say one thing as I do these conversations with people, because in today's world, and we touched on it a little bit, right? A lot of people are suffering on a daily basis, either mental suffering or physical suffering because of how much chaos there is in war and famine. And there are a lot of people working to fix those things, right? So it's important that we keep trying to fix it, right? This is not an escape hatch to say, let's go off to the moon. So I think that's important work, but I always want to say, let's also have hope that there are a few people trying to reimagine a better world. We can do both, but it's important to address the suffering right now, to be present, to do that fight, while you are also sketching a possibility. So I just want to make sure that's clear, and it's not about abandoning and everything's broken and we need to start again.
No, yeah, I really like the optimism. But I really like how you outlined this, having a positive vision for the future and taking the people on board this vision to make it our all vision.
That's how it happens, right?
Yeah.
Who writes the rules? The person who has the vision writes the rules. And so the future becomes their rules. Now, if you only have, my spiritual practice is I lead that everyone has a good intention. Okay? That's just where I start from. And so if 50 people write the rules, they may have good intentions, but it's just 50 people for 8 billion. If you had 100 million write the rules, then it sets up a future for 800 billion across the galactic system. That's how you have to think about it. That, I think, opens up, also eases the pressure to feel like you don't have to have all the answers, because there could be someone who's probably only 5 years old right now who's going to solve it in 40 years. I think the wisdom of the commons and nature probably teaches us about that, right? Like how you kind of do experimentation to figure out how you're going to survive. Yeah. You don't take the first answer you have and say, well, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, evolution is the best example. Evolution brought us here, but evolution has failed a trillion, sextillion, whatever times. But this particular path, that worked, and now we're here talking via Zoom between San Diego and and Algarve. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Anything to add from your side? Anything we haven't talked about?
No, I mean, you had some great questions. I mean,
Thanks.
listen, I could talk about Lunarc forever because it's a passion project.
One really can feel your enthusiasm and your passion for space and for Lunar and for humanity and for the community. That's really great.
I just would encourage you to just go sign the declaration. I think we're not very big. We don't have a big social media thingy going, but we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, so people can follow us for updates. And stay tuned.
All right, thank you so much.
This is how we sign off.
Okay.
What
Nice.
this is?
Yeah, the galactic, like the
This
Spock.
is the Vulcan sign for live long and prosper.
Oh, live long and prosper. Perfect.
Okay.
Amazing.
Okay, ciao.
That was so great. Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.
Hope to see you. Bye bye. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Many thanks for tuning in. If you can't get enough space content, check out the latest episode with Priyanka, who just sent some of her artwork into space and even onto the moon, and is also a member of Lunarc's Advisory Council, aka the Space Federation. So thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you in the next episode of Your Friendly Physicist and Other Nerds, and until then, stay curious.